Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to another episode of New Music Finds. This is where I like to collect together all the different things that I picked up over the past week, present it to you guys, give you a little bit of background, maybe turn you on to something new, or at least remind you about something cool in your own music catalog. I know that whenever I do these episodes, I always think of cool things, and then after we're done here, I'm either listening to the stuff that I picked up or pulling out something new. So hopefully some of that rubs off on you guys. I've got 19 things to run through with you guys, one box set, 18 CDs, and we'll do it here in just a bit. But before we start, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like. All those things do help support my channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by turning on notifications, you'll never miss an episode and stay up to date on really cool things like this with all the new stuff that I've picked up recently. And as I said, just trying to turn you on to something new or remind you about something cool in your own collection. We're going to start off with something that even if you don't have this one, you should probably go pull this album out and play it today. And I'm talking about Van Halen's Fair Warning, their fourth studio album. This one here being an original master recording put out by Mobile Fidelity. They've been doing this series. They're numbered. This one here is 2,749. Numbers never really made any difference to me, but it's still always kind of fun that they do that. And they replicate the original art, packaging and everything for these. And I have to say that I've been getting into these recently. I've got two from Fleetwood Mac, and I now have a total, and so far, all four of the Van Halens that have been released. And each one of these sounds amazingly. It's like listening to the albums for the first time. And I gotta say, this one here has never really clicked with me. I know for a lot of you guys out there, it's a favorite. But for me, for whatever reason, it never really did. And getting this has really changed my opinion as a whole. The drums on here in particular sound amazing. It's just, there's so much depth to the recording, to the sound of this now, that I didn't really pick up even on those fantastic Warner Brothers remasters, which did an amazing job from the original releases of those. But I gotta say, and I would never say that this should replace that, they're two separate things. This one has a different sound than that one, and depending upon whatever mood I'm in, I could go either way. These are always coming off a bit warmer sounding, and I would say that the remastered versions are a bit brighter sounding. But all in all, I am having fun with it. I get these through Anthony at his store. He puts these out for like 37, 38. But if you go on like Amazon, they're like 45 or 47. They're about 10 bucks more. So do check with your local stores because they may sell them at a lower cost than what Amazon does. I have no idea. Usually Amazon is the cheaper of the two. But in this case, no, definitely my local record store. So there was that. There was also the third in a series for the Kinks called The Journey. The first two compilations of this were absolutely amazing. And this is nice to have to finish off the collection, but they really dropped the ball on this one. Disc 1 is a collection of songs. I think it's from 77 up to 84. Might have that year wrong. And so it covers that era, and they do a selection of tracks on Disc 1. Disc 2 is an unreleased live show from 1993. But we miss all that period in between when they were on a different record label. And I understand due to rights, we don't get that. But why put a show in from 93? I don't think they should have passed the 1984, the last studio album that they're covering within this. They should have done a live show from that point. But also, why do a live show? These compilations were so great because they had selected tracks and paired them next to other ones. The way they had sequenced the albums, it was just unexpected. But there were themes behind it. There was conceptual ideas behind it. And they don't do any of that on this. This is just straight, a greatest hits from that era and a live show. So it's cool. I'm glad I got it. But it's nowhere near as good as Journey 1 and Journey 2 from the Kinks. All right, the other one I picked up, the Jethro Tull box set. This is called Still Living in the Past. Apparently, when I talked about it in my What Just Dropped episode, I said that it was called Living in the Past. And it is based on the album called Living in the Past, but the box set has been renamed Still Living in the Past, right? You guys know what I was talking about. So this is 5 CDs and a Blu-ray. So 6 discs, just like every other box set that they've done. 2 of the discs are here. Then we have the cardboard sleeve, which has something in it. We have I believe it's a 100-page book, you know, full of photos and all kinds of great information. Another loose CD in the cardboard sleeve and 2 in the back. And I always reorganize it once I get it. So for me, there are 2 discs that are Steven Wilson remixes. I put those here, and I put the non-remix stuff, which is actually disc 1 over here, but usually it goes 1, 2, 3, then 4, 5, 6, like that. So I put the Blu-ray in the back one because for me, don't care about that. And I put the 2-disc live show there. So Steven Wilson remixes, live show there, easy access to it. But this is basically an expansion of the compilation album that was called Living in a Past from 1972 that caught people up on the first 5 albums that the band had released as they had become really popular on the previous album. And so they did a compilation where they remixed some songs. They had some outtakes, some unreleased tunes, album cuts to catch everybody up. And now they have expanded it into this package here. So I think I have the original one here. I've got a Chrysalis Records copy of it. This is a US edition, which has Hymn 43 on it instead of Locomotive, or Locomotive Breath, right? Is that the right one? And so a little bit different for the US, but I've got the original one here that I can enjoy. Single disc, now expanded to a massive, this has 19 tracks on the disc 1, which they've expanded, remixes, edits, demos, 68 to 71, and then Living in the Past, part 1 and part 2 now, and those each have, 17 tracks and 14 tracks on it, and then, like I said, the live show. So all very cool. Some of the stuff has been released on the other box sets, and they grabbed versions of things that were remixes. The Steven Wilson already remixed over there from something and placed it on here. So it's not a straight all 2025 remix of this album. It's an expanded thing, and the stuff that they added in that is related to this stuff in some manner has been brought over to it. But a lot of this is unreleased material, and either way, it's just cool as a package. And these things, they do it up right. This is 6 discs, and I think it was about $54 on Amazon. So great deal at that. All right, now this one here was a mega one for me. I've talked about before this band called Billy Satellite, self-titled release on Rock Candy Records. And let me see if I can find the year on the inside here. Originally released in 1984, featuring Danny Chauncey, who would go on to 38 Special. Plus, this has the original version of I Want to Go Back that Eddie Money did. So just all those things right there make this a fantastic album. And I've loved it. I've talked about it with Grant Arthur on Favorite Underrated and Obscure Albums. I've talked about it on his Rock Candy Records show. I've talked about it with Pete Pardo over on his show. So great album, right? I thought that was the only one. Somebody weighed in and told me that there was actually Billy Satellite 2, and it got released. Well, you know what? I don't know. Do you guys know? I have to wear glasses now to see things. I was going to see if there's a year on here, and there is. 2016 on AOR Heaven Records. 10 more tracks recorded as a second album at the time, shelved and never released. So not like they got back together for this. This is a follow-up album to this. So I would say this is probably like 1985, give or take. There is a book inside. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I have listened to this album about 4 or 5 times already. I listened to it 2 or 3 times before I went to bed last night, and I got up this morning and listened to it 2 more times before filming this video with you guys. I'm just really enjoying it. Now, beware, this is an expensive CD out there. I don't usually talk costs on here, but up until this point, I think I'd paid, I don't know, around $50 for a CD is maybe the most I've ever paid, maybe a little bit more. But this one here is $60, so I'm moving up. I'm spending a bit more, and I got 10% off of it from the person, but I couldn't get any more, so I ended up just breaking down and doing it. It's very hard to come by. I only found 2 copies out there in the world. I'm sure there's maybe more if you do hunting in different places, but I found one, and I think they were actually the same person, just listed in 2 different places, and I bought this one off eBay, and they got it to me super quick. Was not expecting to get it the day before, and it just made my day getting this because I've loved this album so much and didn't know there would be a second and got a second. And sometimes these bands get back together and record new material. And I've talked to you about that with bands like Trillion and Touch, who did a fantastic album on Rock Candy Records. And they put out a new album in the last couple of years. And it's a good album, but the voices changed and it really sounds like a different band. It's great AOR melodic rock, but it doesn't sound like the pop rock of this with the fantastic vocals. So that happens, and I don't mind that. I mean, I will go along on the journey with these bands, but I love it when the album is recorded at the time and it's a lost album, so to speak, and it finally sees the light of day. Now, I was gonna I had a different stack in front of me, but because I just talked to you about this, I want to roll into Craig Brooks, who is the singer of Touch. And so I did a big order off of eBay from Heavy Metal Museum, and I found like 5 albums or 4 albums earlier in the day, and then it was just, my mind was spinning about all the amazing stuff I saw. And before I went back to bed, I went back and ordered another 4 or 5, whatever. 9 arrived altogether. That's what this stack is here. I did an unboxing from the mail type video where you guys saw these, so I'm going to kind of go through these fast. But this was the singer of Touch, I should say, because they're back together. I mean, this was a 1-album wonder who then came back 40 years on. Mark Mangold is the keyboard, who I always really liked, so that's the reason I took note of that band. And he plays a lot on this, so essentially if you like the new Touch album, you've got those guys doing this under Craig Brooks, his name. I didn't know that was who it was. I'm not so versed in some of these older bands the way I am on the ones that I grew up with. But through a little bit of research, I found out that's who it was, so I picked that up. Moonstone Project, right? So I talked to you guys about this. This is one of those, like, all kinds of cool guests and stuff are on it. It's put together by Matt Filippini. I think I'm saying his name right. I'm putting on the glasses again to be able to see this a bit better. I think that's how you say his name. Andrew Freeman is on the first track singing. We got Ian Pace on drums on a number of these. Let me go to the next one on here. Kelly Keeling is on vocals. Most of it is the famous singer, the famous drummer, and the people in between. I don't recognize the names, but I'm sure they have fame in their own right. Paul Shortino, Carmen Apiece. We've got James Christensen from House of Lords. Mark Mangold, incidentally, the keyboardist from Touch, is now in House of Lords. Eric Bloom from BOC. We've also got Manfred Mann on backing vocals on one of these tracks. We've got Robin Beck on backing tracks, James Christensen, also on a number of these. I know I said his name already, but I'm just reading it. And Glenn Hughes and Graham Bonnet. So lots and lots of cool artists on the Moonstone Project. That's the reason I picked this up when I was doing the unboxing. There was, a lot of times on the other 2 releases, they had listed on the back who the artists were. They didn't do it on this, so I didn't know because it came sealed. And I don't always want to do all of the research up front. When I see this and saw this and I said, it doesn't matter, I'm buying it. I like to do when I get it and I find out at that time. If I know I like the artist already, I don't necessarily go listen to anything, and I don't do a deep dive to know who plays what and all of that. I wait until I get it and I can go through the liner notes. And so that was the case with that project. And I also picked up 2 Overland releases, 6 being the newest one and the one right before it, Scandalous. Now this one has Robert Saul playing guitar on here, but this one has Tommy D. Nander on it. And the sound difference between them is amazing. I mean, this has one way, it's a little more modern edge, and this one here has a little bit more of the pop AOR, melodic rock sound style stuff. And I have to say, I ended up really liking this one more than this one. Not that it wasn't good. I was really just buying it to have more of Steve Overland's voice. And on that note, I'm going to switch gears for just a second and talk about the 2 FM releases that I picked up. So Aphrodisiac, and I already have the first 3 albums. So this being the 4th album, and then jumping ahead to 13. And I have the album that comes after this. If you watched last week, then you know I picked it up. But I've been going through a big Steve Overland kick and exploring FM and a number of different projects that Steve has been part of, and different projects that he's written songs for, like with Robert Hart, a former Bad Company singer, and produced those albums. So a lot of cool things like that, having fun with it. I've got some more FM coming down the road. An album that a lot of you guys told me to go out and get, Sign of the Wolf, and didn't know anything about this and still have heard nothing about it other than you guys have weighed in telling me to go get it. And from what you had said, it sounded interesting, so I went ahead and picked it up. And let me read off some of the people, the artists that are on this. I'm trying to find them now. Where do they list them? Let's see. All right, so we've got, okay, on vocals, all of the vocals on here are Andrew Freeman. I like Andrew Freeman a lot. If you don't know who he is, he's the lead singer in Last in Line. But before that, he sung for a lot of groups that he didn't record with, like he sang for Hurricane, he sang for Lynch Mob. I'm trying to think of some of the other projects. I know he's been out there and he's guested in some different things, but really when he came to forefront, and now he's played on a lot of different albums, but it's through Last in Line. So here we go. We've got Doug Aldrich on guitars, Steve Morris is on guitars, and that's Morris, the Ian Gillan guitar player. Chuck Wright from Quiet Riot, he's on here. Mark Bowles is on here as well. Vinny Appice is on drums. Tony Carey, Mark Mangold. Hey, there we go. Another relation to Touch. Steve Mann, those guys are on keyboards. So very, very cool album with a lot of great guests. What sold me on it was when I did look into it and I saw that there was a number of guests on it, but it was that Andrew Freeman was singing. So I have to say, though, this has a bit more of a modern flair to it than I tend to like. None of the songs have stuck with me, and Andrew doesn't really have that same forceful singing that he has with Last in Line and some of the other projects where I really like his vocals. And that may all be intentional, but this album has not hit with me the way I had hoped that it had. But then again, I got 9 albums on the same day, so I'm going to tuck this away and I'll come back to it, and you never know. It may become, really grow on me in time. So one that hit me a lot, and I almost did not get it. I found it. It's been very hard to come by, and so I bought it just simply based on that. The band Fate. And this is their album called Matter of Attitude. It's on the reissue, at least, MTM and SPV Records. And so claim to fame here is that their guitar player is from the band, or was from the band, Merciful Fate. And this was a pop version of that, essentially. Still has some of those dark sounding guitars. Looking for the full name of the guy, but Sherman is the guitar player that was part of Merciful Fate. Never understand why sometimes you have albums like these and they literally do not list the performers anywhere. You get your thank you credits, your lyrics, and all that sort of stuff. But Hank Sherman, there you go. I knew it would pop into my head at some point. So this doesn't sound really anything at all like Merciful Fate. It's basically taking the sound of the guitars that Hank Sherman did and making a pop band, a glam metal almost, more AOR melodic rock, but it was the keyboards in this that really hit me. And I fell in love with this and have been listening to this a lot. And I've actually ordered a few more albums by the band. Looking forward to getting those. I ended up picking this up, Heartland. I know there's a bunch of bands out there called Heartland, but this one has Chris Usse from Virginia Wolf and also has... guitar player in it is, in this case, this is Gary Sharp is the guitar player. So I found that out after I had opened it. But I have 2 other albums by Heartland that has Steve Morris, Morris. The reason I keep saying that, if you don't know, is there is Steve Morse, and he was the Deep Purple and Dixie Dregs guitar player, and there's Steve Morris, who's the Ian Gillan guitar player. Also part of Export, part of this band and plays with a lot of others like Lone Rider. So you can kind of see where I'm going. If you follow me every week, then you know that I've been talking about Overland, Heartland, um, Steve Morris certainly, but Lone Rider, Ian Gillan. I've been talking about all these bands, Bad Company and stuff. And so that's where my mind has been. And I've been pulling out and ordering music that is in that vein. This is one of them, Heartland. Turned out to not be as good as I had hoped that it would be. It was a little mellower than I would have liked. But as I said, I got 9 albums, so, that one might hit me at a different time. The other 2 Heartland albums that I had really hit with me at the same time as the FM albums that I have. So they were just very good. Picked this one up, Scavenger, their 1985 debut album, reissued with a couple EPs added onto it. Female-fronted heavy metal stuff, very good. I got this really just because they reformed. They have a new front woman singing, and she is phenomenal, and I'm loving that album. This one didn't hit as hard. It's 1985. I get it. It's early on sort of stuff. They haven't done anything in, I don't know, did that album come out this year? 39 or 40 years until they did the new album, but this is good stuff. I'm glad to have it in the collection. And then Torch, the debut album by the band, and I wanted to show the inside of this because they have a much better album cover inside it. I don't know if that's an alternate one or what that's from, but this album cover is kind of a little crazy. It was a little bit of a turn off, I have to say, when I first saw it, but it's 1980s metal stuff. There's the backside. In fact, I think if we open it up, then we can get the full picture. And I do love it when that happens and when the CDs maintain that sort of stuff. But this one too, a reissue. It's got the Fire Razor EP and 3 additional bonus tracks on it. So 8 total bonus tracks come on this, and this is just also classic. I bought newer albums by this band and this band, so getting the debut albums was very cool. In a way, it was a lot like getting the Billy Satellite, where I could go and finally check out. In fact, that's what this one was. And I want to also point out this is their second album, not the debut. I called it the debut when I did the unboxing because I didn't know yet. And I later found out that's actually their second album. There's very limited information on the group. So, but getting these albums now and having them in the collection to at least understand where these artists come from is always a fun thing for me. I'm trying to get out of the way. The stuff, I've still got a few more to go through. Picked up another Eloy band. This one is called Floating. I think it's 1975, if I'm not mistaken. These have been a lot of fun, synth-laden style music, prog. The 70s era stuff is more like the typical prog you'd expect, and then you got into the 80s and it's more like a synth wave style stuff. And I started with the 80s era of the band, but I've gone back and found that I really love the 70s era as well. So basically, as I come across these EMI Harvest reissues that are done so well, I'm just going to keep picking them up. I think I'm going to love everything that there is. This one here was a complete sort of blind buy almost, in that I didn't know anything about the artist. I looked up something and found it and decided to go with it. A group called Fatal Opera. I think this is their second album, The 11th Hour. It's in the 90s. I want to say this is like 93, 94, somewhere in that time frame maybe. Claim to fame is that they have drummer Gar Samuelson from Megadeth. This was a project he did after that. Now there's a guy in here, his name is Andy Freeman. And I do think it is an entirely different person than the Andrew Freeman that I was just talking about, who has a phenomenal voice. This guy on here, I would say the downfall, and I read it in the reviews before I picked it up, that the music is phenomenal. It was the vocalist that really wasn't that great. And it's probably what killed things. But this is also full-on heavy metal, thrash metal sounding style stuff that really wasn't popular at the time, even though metal as a whole was able to weather better than, say, glam metal in the early 90s. Yeah, it's probably really the sound that in the end made it so the band didn't do all that well. But they put out 3 albums. And this one here, like I said, I think it's the second one, but the music is fantastic. It's a Japanese release on Avalon Records. And it was $14.99, still sealed at Sound Exchange. I couldn't believe it. I just said, geez, first of all, it's not a $30 album as most Japanese imports are and were back in the day. probably came in somebody's collection, and Anthony put it out at a reasonable price, as he does. And I love that about Anthony and his store. All right, switching gears back to Bad Company, because I've been on that kick for a couple weeks now, ever since Mick Rouse, the guitar player, passed, God rest his soul. I've been exploring different things that the band members have done, going down the road of both Bad Company, the offshoot projects, what the solo or the guys did solo, and an album that I knew that was out there but had never picked up. This came out in 2016. Simon Kirk did a debut solo album. So far is only one. Now, he's part of the band Lone Rider, playing drums with them. I'm sure he sings backup with them. He doesn't take lead. Steve Overland does that. And so he's always been sort of in the background. Now, he did take lead on at least one Bad Company song called, I think it was called 100 Miles. It's on the Holy Water album. I think it's the last track. And I remember it being a B-side. That's how I found it. So I don't know if he ever sang on anything else, but I know he sang that. And that's always put him in the forefront of my mind, that he could do so much more. Well, this album proves it. And he even does a cover of the song Feel Like Making Love on here, but the album is basically sort of a acoustic laden rock or leaning. It does have full band, and they do rock out, but it's not as hard rock or straight ahead rock as Bad Company. But you hear all of the Bad Company hallmarks and elements in this album, and he's a really good singer. I thoroughly enjoyed the album. I think he writes something on the inside about it. I think he flew to Nashville and recorded with a band. He was trying to get all of his regular session guys together, and it was just being problematic. He got introduced to a band that already existed, and he basically went in and co-wrote all these songs, or wrote them and worked the music out with them, and then recorded. So it's an interesting project, and different side to Simon Kirk. And we're going to end on me getting a deluxe edition of the Desolation Angels album. This is just one I didn't have. I have the first three. I don't have Burning Sky yet, and I don't know if they ever issued the sixth studio album called Rough Diamonds that was with Paul Rogers or not, but this one here, the fifth one, and you've got the original 10-track album, but then they add on to it 8 bonus tracks on that disc, and then there's a second CD of 11 more bonus tracks. And what really caught my eye on this was that we have a number of unreleased songs like Smokin' 45 and an outtake called Rock Fever on here, and then a lot of alternate takes and stuff. And I really wanted to hear those songs I had never heard before. And so picked this up, and the sound on it was amazing, and it just did exactly what I needed it to. I was in a Bad Company mood, and even though it wasn't new, it just was a reintroduction, and it provided a bunch of alternate content for me to hear. And with all those other bands that I've been picking up that are Bad Company adjacent, so to speak, plus that Simon Kirk solo album, I was just really, really enjoying things. But I got all this great music, 19 total things. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can reach into your own collection and pull out some Bad Company today, or maybe some Jethro Tull or that Van Halen Fair Warning, and enjoy it. But if not, look into some of these releases, because there's some really great stuff hidden out there. And do tune into the videos that I've been putting together with Grant Arthur called Favorite, Underrated, and Obscure Albums. Those are the ones where I think they're basically perfect 10 albums, but they've run under the wire and nobody knows it about them. And 2 of them that I've already talked about are these: the Touch album on Rock Candy, which is a self-titled release, and the Billy Satellite, which is also a self-titled release, both available on Rock Candy. Look into these. I think they are phenomenal albums that definitely are due more love. So there you go. A little bit of everything in this episode, showing you what I got, but also some album recommendations for you. So hopefully you enjoyed. All right, everyone, take care. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.